Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Bower. I'm Ryan Steffen, the Executive Director of Bower Center for the Arts in beautiful Bedford, Virginia. This podcast is all about inspiring conversations, exploring the arts in our community, and shining a spotlight on the incredible individuals and organizations that make the Bedford art scene so vibrant. I would like to start this podcast today by dedicating it to one of our most avid listeners over the years, Sarah Broughton, who passed away this past Thursday evening. Sarah was the original executive director for Bower Center for the Arts and held that position unpaid for 10 years. Under her direction, she built the very foundation that the Bower Center for the Arts stands upon. And it is because of her infectious, positive attitude, hard work, and vision that we are the success we are today. Though we will miss your presence, Sarah, your spirit will always be felt within the walls of the Bower Center. So I am excited this morning to welcome Linda Hollett-Bazouzi as our guest. Linda was the esteemed judge for the 12th Annual Currie Bower Exhibition, where she presented her awards this past Friday night. She brings with her a lifetime of experience as a gallery docent and an award-winning artist and arts educator. Thank you for joining me, Linda.
Well, thank you for having me, Ryan. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so glad to talk to you today. So before we talk about the exhibit and your judging, I would like to talk about you as an artist and you as a person. So can you tell me just a little bit about yourself? It can be your history, your life inside the art world, outside of the art world. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'll just kind of go through my history briefly because I think sometimes people are interested in how the trajectory works. And a lot of it has been through it looks like happenstance, and then I look at it and like, no, this is definitely a pattern that was meant to be. So I've always been considered an artist, even as a small child in school. I was the one they wanted me to draw stuff for the teacher and that kind of thing. But I wanted to be a ballerina, and then a nurse, and then a doctor. And in addition, I loved school, and I played teacher a lot, although I never really planned to be a teacher. Because ballerina was more exciting.
Right.
And then I found out that I fainted at the sight of blood. So that pretty much took nurse and doctor off the table. So I went away to college and I really wasn't sure what major I was going to go into. The first 2 years were basically all of your basic courses anyway. Mm-hmm. But when I had to declare a major, found out that I could get a lot of money through grants and scholarships if I wanted to be a teacher. And so that made the decision much easier. I would get a degree in education, in art education, which allowed me to take all my studio classes like I wanted to, still get a liberal arts education with all the math and literature and philosophy and that kind of stuff. And the only difference was instead of taking 6 classes or 8 classes of language, which I really didn't want to do because I'd done so much of that in high school, I would have I was like, no more language.
No.
I would have to take education courses. I'm like, okay, cool. So I did that and got a job teaching accidentally. I actually, during college, my major focus of study was not really painting or drawing or anything like that. It was enameling and jewelry making because that's what I found fascinating. And when I got out of college, I actually got a job here in Richmond with Camborian Jewelers. And in the meantime, I applied to the different school systems around Richmond, in and around Richmond, and got a call back for a board sub at the end of the spring and took that position, quit Camborians, took the position, and the teacher ended up moving and they offered me a full-time position next year. So I literally just fell into everything that came my way. Now, what's really interesting, I'll just interject for my art stuff. I was doing art all along, still drawing mostly. And as a teacher, you don't have time to do any kind of artwork for the first, I'd say 10 or 15 years.
That's true.
But I was still doing some drawing and playing around. You just don't. If you're really planning things out the way they need to be, it takes all your time.
Right. I was an English teacher, and I don't think I read a book for the first 10 years that I taught English, except for the ones I taught.
Oh no! Oh yeah, exactly. If you are doing a good job at planning things out and thinking about your students, you can't just phone it in. So, but I did think all along, I think I'm kind of meant to be something else, or I'm destined to do something. I didn't know what it was. Okay, that's in the back of my mind all the time I'm teaching. I taught for 35 years before I retired. And then in the 1990s, I made several trips to the Middle East. I started doing drawings about that. I made a set of cards about it. I had gotten interested in, coincidentally, I'd gotten interested in Persian miniatures, and I started doing studies of Islamic angels and doing a series of that, and actually then started doing paintings in acrylics of photographs of the landscapes that I had seen while traveling. Okay. And I will just say, then at some point, I was driving to work one day, and this has nothing to do with me being an artist, because I was driving to work and thinking again, I think there's something else I'm supposed to be doing. And this voice came over me, saying, almost like smacking me in the forehead, saying, you are doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I pulled off the road. It was such a moment. And I was, like I said, on my way to work, I'm like, okay, cool. So that was good to know. Again, Like I said, I was on the trajectory I was supposed to be, and it was confirmed. Anyway, I started about 2005. I started doing landscape painting with water mixable oils, because I wanted to paint en plein air, which is in open air.
Mm-hmm.
And that is easier to do with oils than acrylics. I didn't want to have to bring turpentine and stuff around. So water mixable oils seemed like a good solution. They'd been around for about 10 or 15 years at that point. And then I started doing little shows where I'd make just proposal bookstores and stuff. And about 2007, I started working with palette knife and water mixable oils. And that's pretty much where I am right now, still today. Although the funny thing is, full circle, a couple of years ago, I did a series of Richmond alleyways, and I did them in gouache, which is basically poster paint, which of course is what I used the entire time I taught.
Right.
Because that is the medium of choice for our teachers for their students. And I'm like, well, and everybody's talking about how hard it is. I'm like, no, I've been using this since I was 6 years old in school, for heaven's sakes. So I'm like, hello, old friend.
Yeah.
So, full circle.
Thank you for driving us through that whole path. I think our life experience informs our art. It informs how we move throughout this world. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and you started to answer, but I'm going to ask it more directly, was what are the subject matters that you like to explore in your art? What inspires you to create?
Right. I tend to work in a series.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be the person that does first, I think I'll do this landscape. I think I'll do this still life. I'm going to try some experimental abstract. I tend to focus on one thing and go deeply, and then I may, touch on some other things later on and then come back to something. So I consider myself a landscape painter, first of all.
Okay.
I will do buildings. Usually that will be with a brush, because it's depending on the way I'm doing the buildings, how specific it has to be. As I said, I use a knife, so and my work is very detailed even with the knife. But sometimes a brush does help with building details if I'm doing a building.
Sure.
That doesn't happen very often. I love to do plein air, and that does inform my studio work. And I think people who are painting in their studios should also, if they're doing landscape, should absolutely also paint on plein air, just to understand that photographs lie.
Yes.
And if you're doing a still life, you need to be painting from real still lifes at least some of the time, so that when you look at a photograph, you understand, oh, that shadow's too dark. That highlight is too light. And you can't know that if you haven't already experienced it in real time and real space.
Yes, such a smart thing to think about.
Yeah, and I didn't realize it at first. And I really do enjoy doing one-day workshops on plein air painting and palette knife painting, color mixing, and that kind of thing. But mostly, I like to do landscapes. I'm interested in nature, and I try to capture. I'm not really trying to reproduce literally what I'm seeing, although I'm a very literal person. I keep in mind that what I really want to convey is what I am feeling at the moment. And that's going to be wow, look at those clouds. Wow, feel that wind. Oh, I can hear the birds chirping. And I've had, even though I don't put birds in my painting usually, a lot of people have said, I felt like I was there when I was looking at your painting. I'm like, okay, mission accomplished.
Yeah, that was such an introspective teacher answer to that question. That you said that you like to work in series, that you like to study, you like to explore, you like to create. It's the delving deep, which is what a lot of us teachers like to do, and we try to get our students to do.
Yeah.
Is not do it quickly and not do it on the surface, but to really explore, to dig, to see what's there. And you said it's all full circle, but I think the teaching background has also informed the way that you produce your art.
Well, and I also, and this came to mind when I was looking at the show, I asked myself all the time, why am I painting this particular scene? What is it that draws me? What do I want to accomplish for the viewer? Because I am going to likely put this out to sell, which is a different mindset than if you're just creating merely for yourself.
Sure.
And let me back up. I always create first just for myself.
Right.
But somewhere in the back of my mind, there's this thing, it might end up framed on a gallery wall somewhere. And so it's going to be seen by other people, even after I die. And what do I want them to see and feel, experience? How am I going to drive the viewer's view of my work?
Yeah. So speaking of galleries,
and that's kind of a docent question.
Yeah.
I was with the Virginia Museum for a while.
Yeah. So speaking of galleries, let's transition in now to talking a little bit about how you came to the Bower this past few weeks as the person or as the judge of our 12th Annual Currie Bower Exhibition. So that is the exhibit that we currently have on display at Bower Center. The Currie Bower exhibit was started to honor Edna Currie and the late John Bower, who were our primary benefactors. It started about 12 years ago, and it was specifically created as an open exhibition, accepting all entries that meet the eligibility criteria. And this year, the Currie Bower exhibit had a total of 110 works by 60 artists, adults and youth together. Most of them were local, but the works did come from as far as North Carolina, Chicago, and even Minnesota. So thank you for being the judge. Thank you for coming in and studying and looking at these works and conveying your expertise. I know that you saw the images ahead of time before you came in. So I guess my first question for you is, can you comment a little bit on what you noticed about the exhibit digitally before you actually saw anything in person? Is there anything that stuck out to you? Anything that you noticed?
Okay, yes, and of course, you know exactly what I'm going to say because I said it in the talk.
And you can say it again.
So this will be a warning for artists too. My first reaction was, wow, the photography was really good. There were a lot of variety of styles and mediums. The work was really good, and the photography was really good. And then when I got there, I found that I really wasn't surprised. The photography was that good. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I'll talk about the size in a minute, but getting back to the photography, I then found out that in many cases, or in some cases, the photography wasn't that good and had to be redone in order to make it something I could look at and appreciate and also put on the website. So that goes back to one of the first things you got to do as an artist, as an exhibiting artist, is be able to photograph your work. And you don't have to have an expensive camera. You don't even have to have a tripod. All you need is your phone and a steady hand and an overcast day, and learn how to line up straight in front of the work with no background showing, or it can be cropped. And if it's sculpture, you need to have something behind it. Right. But you need to know how to do these things because it can make a difference as to whether you even get your work accepted into a show.
Absolutely. That's the first step in a lot of these exhibits.
Most of it is done online, and people don't understand that. And a lot of purchases these days are done online. And if it's a crummy photograph, it may not get a person to stop to look and say, oh, let me think about that?
Yeah, I'm going to echo
So,
what you just said. As a gallery, Bower Center does sell a lot of the pieces that we have there. And I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody that will come in and say, I saw this piece online in the exhibit and I need to see it in person to see if I want to buy it. And that means
of course.
the photograph was so powerful that they came in to come see it.
Precisely. And, I work at Crossroads Art Center here in Richmond, and we do a lot of call to entries. And we sometimes have to send word back and say, you'll have to rephotograph this. We cannot put it on our website.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it makes us look bad
to
have that bad photograph on our website. And secondly, it's not going to help. If anything, it's going to hurt. So, and we'll give them advice on how to do it, but can be very simple. Now, we're not talking about photographing for publication in a book or something where you might have to have a really high-end work, and then that might take it to a different level. But getting it high resolution, steady hand, decent lighting, it's 99% possible to do by the artist themselves.
Yeah. So you've seen the photos, you come into the gallery and you see it on the walls. Oh, what do you notice?
I was going to tell you one thing.
Please go back. That's fine.
The one surprise the surprise I had, and this was just I want to call it a prejudice, but an assumption, that I looked at certain things and assumed that they were, and I wasn't conscious of this, that they were a certain size, either small or large. And then when I got there, I was like, oh, this is much smaller than I expected, or this is much larger than I expected, because there was no point of reference either way.
Right.
So that was just funny to me. I didn't expect to have that reaction. So learning curve for me.
Sure. Yeah, because they're all kind of sized the same online.
And it's kind of it did make a difference into how I eventually judged the show too, because I thought, well, this is really great. It would be even better if it was much larger or considered in a miniature way, maybe. Anyway.
Sure. Yeah. So, this exhibit had two different divisions. There was the youth division and the adult division. And I'd love to talk about the youth division first. So we'll talk a little bit about just the artwork collection you saw, some general impressions, and then I'm going to have you highlight for us the winners that you had from that youth edition. So I know that I had spread them out. The committee and I spread those pieces out throughout the exhibit rather than secluding them into one general area. But what can you say about the quality of the work, the subject matter of the work, what you saw youth who are ages 13 through 17 producing for this exhibit?
Well, it was obvious that a lot of thought had been put into the work, especially in the youth division. Of course, it's likely that many of these pieces were created within the classroom, possibly as a project that their teacher had given them. So that requires deeper thought, because that's going to be part of the rubric that the student is given, which is a good thing, because your best art is always the kind of art that makes you go back in. It's not just technical skill. It's the kind that makes you come back again going, wait, what was that? Or you think about it when you walk away, and then you want to come back and look at it again, and you may not even know why, but you're sensing on a subconscious level that there's more to it, that this onion has a lot of layers to peel away. And that's what I found in many of the works. They were well thought out and well presented.
Yeah. And in many cases, at least for myself, if the label had not told me they were part of the youth division, I would not have guessed that they were youth.
I agree. I was very surprised. And I was really glad that you mixed it up, because a lot of times if people come from one or the other, they only gravitate to that one show and they don't go to the other. And this way, everyone got to enjoy everything, and I'm sure they felt the same way you did.
Yeah, absolutely. Judging is hard. And I it's taking something that is subjective and trying to make it objective when it can't always be. So before we talk about winners of anything, can you talk a little bit about what is it that you look for as a judge as you start to figure out who is going to rise to the top in terms of awards?
Right. That's a really good question. And I actually try to go in with an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, I have a background in art. And so I understand, and I will be looking for, or I will be trying, let me back up. When I find a piece that catches my attention, and sometimes it don't catch my attention the first time, I may have to go back in and look again, which I always do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask myself why. And then I will start with usually some kind of rubric based on the elements and principles of design, the elements of art, line, shape, color, value,
Mm-hmm.
texture, and the principles, balance, composition, that kind of thing. And they may give me part of the answer, but a lot of times it's going to be something that's more of a surprise. Something that is indeed intangible. So I can talk to you about the winners about these principles and elements, but there will always be something else that drives you back to it. And that's what it is. What kept making me go back and look at this?
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean to put words into your mouth, but I was around you when you were judging and talking to you about it. And a common thing that I just heard you mention in passing is the story, that there is some kind of story behind the piece that compels you beyond those elements and principles of art, that while they have used those really well, it's also the story that compels you to take a look or a second look or a third look.
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of times I was wondering what's going on in this image. Who is this person? Why are they doing this? You're exactly right. And I completely forgot about that because I tell people all the time, like if they're making up a label, if you can, you should put part of the story on that label. Now, there are a few people that disagree. They'll say, no, the viewer should bring the story and that's all that matters. But I found that most people respond even more once they read the story. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even see that. I didn't think about that. That's brilliant. Or I can relate to it even more because of whatever. And so that story, and even if it's something that's totally non-objective, I mean, which is abstract taken to the point where it's merely the elements and there is no subject matter to refer to, there's still that question of what was going through their brain.
Yeah, the
Why
creator
did
story.
Paul Klee work with just colors and lines? Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a story about an image. It can be, as you said, the creator story.
Yeah. I think, and not to give anything away when you talk about your awards, but I think that there's some that are the story behind the image, and there are some that is the story behind the creator that emerge even as you name your own winners. I'm looking at my time. I want to make sure we have enough time for you to talk here. So can we jump into the youth division? That's okay. We're going to be fine. Woody will let us know if we're going too long. So let's start talking first by the youth division. You gave away 3 awards of merit. Real broadly, for those of you that would like to follow along or would like an image, if you go to the website at bowercenter.org under that exhibits tab, you're going to find the exhibit shows online. And there is a winner placard at the top of the page. And you can kind of look at the images that Linda's talking about as she's speaking a bit about these pieces. So you have 3 awards of merit: Zuri by Ruby Helm, Legacy of Humanity by Caroline Hart, and Shadow Play by Ruby Helm as well. Can you talk a little bit about these pieces?
Yes, and I will also talk a little bit about. You just want me to do the let me back up first and say I picked first. At first, when I'm selecting them, I'm like, okay, all of these are ones I want to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start eliminating and until I get down to the number I'm allowed. And so some pieces that didn't get in that final, I think people need to know.
No,
some pieces that didn't get into the final cut may have been right there up until the final cut. It's like, well, I want to do 4, but I can only do 3 awards of merit. So
I'm going to give away one of your secrets here. because I watched you do the judging, and she had a whole stack of Post-it notes, and she walked around and she Post-it noted all the ones that she thought were going to win. And then I would watch her go through and just take down Post-it notes as she had to deduct or reduce the number that she had there. I'm giving away your secret just a little bit.
No, that's okay, because otherwise I would have also lost my way and got confused, because it's certainly easy to do. And you were all over the place too, because we had three locations as you consider the hallways.
Right.
Well, four, but anyway, two floors. So, so the three that were in merit didn't quite make place, but I loved, again, the story of the shadow study. I just love the technical skill, and again, thinking about these being youth divisions, there was a lot of skill and thought put into the way the shadow was done, and a lot of observation. Clearly, that it wasn't just light and dark. They were paying attention to how light, how dark, and where in even a whole wall it became light and dark. And the Zuri, again, I was wondering about who is this person, and I got to talk to Ruby later on about who that person was, and it was really interesting that I misread completely, because I was seeing like angel wings and thinking this might be a sad thing, and she was saying no, it's just full of hope. She just she needed to fill in the space there, so she put in wings as kind of a hopeful thing, a future. I'm like, that's brilliant. But there you go.
Right.
Different people bring different things to the table. And then the legacy of humanity. I liked the fact that there was a question mark over top of the exclamation point for peace. And so timely, although I'm sure it was not done, obviously, within the past couple of weeks. But
right.
I just love the texture, and there are also three-dimensional objects attached to it that I thought was really interesting. Gave it a slightly different dimension than just being flat.
Yeah. It's interesting. Again, as a former teacher, I gravitate towards students as well. I will say, I don't know if you had the opportunity to watch, but seeing Ruby, I hope you're listening, seeing Ruby's face when you talked about all of the art was just delightful. Like, for a student to hear a judge talk about pieces, their own as well as other people's, and understanding how that is being judged was kind of great to watch. And then I did talk to Caroline afterwards.
And I thought it was important.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, go ahead. You said you were talking to Caroline.
Oh, so I talked to Caroline.
I was just thinking, I was really. Go ahead.
You win. You go.
No, I was just saying, I wanted specifically to say things that I thought the students could take away. Yeah, you go.
No. So I was just laughing that I talked to Caroline afterwards. She's actually one of our camp counselors this summer. And I said, I'm going to give away a secret that you have. When you put this piece into the show, you have to name a value if it's not for sale. And she said 1 cent. And I was like, why did you say it was 1 cent? And she said, because I was walking along the street picking up trash, and that's where everything came from that was in that piece. So it was only worth a cent. Which I thought was delightful. I didn't know until after the show was done. We were talking as we were cleaning up, and I thought that adds so much to that story as well, that again, it was part of that process. So
Right. See, and isn't that interesting? All right. So go ahead.
No, I'm just watching our time. Woody, I'm sorry. It's going to be a long one.
I know.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about your top three. You can talk about them in any order you want. You talk about your top three here.
Okay, very quickly. I love the two figures, the routine. I just felt like any woman, certainly, but I think men too. You have your own rituals you have to do to get ready for, whatever, daytime, night out, whatever. And it just really related on so many different levels, especially those foam rollers, but also the way she applied the paint. And there was a lot of texture. And the coloration was very subtle. And so was the shading. It was just beautifully done. And the cropping. So there wasn't just the whole face. It was just zeroed in on the face, the expression, the concentration. Professor Penn reminded me of William Johnson's work, and whom I loved, but I loved the subtle gradation that Faith had put in the face and the shirt and everything, so that it wasn't flat like his work was. And finally, after the burn, my background was enamels, So it was a tiny little piece, but it had so much information in it. And I love the fact that there was actually burn on the metal. And you'd have to know more about the process to appreciate it. But it was just beautifully done. And his teacher said he did intend to do that, which was even more brilliant. But I thought it was accidental, also brilliant because people need to recognize happy accidents, especially as an artist.
Yeah. Sometimes the best things you create happen by accident.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now we want to go to the adults?
We do.
Okay.
I want to spend some time talking about the adults. This is, one of the biggest exhibits we have every year. It's one of the most well-known exhibits we have every year. I'm going to turn the floor over to you and let you talk about all of these pieces in whatever order you want. Don't worry about the time.
Okay. All right. Well, so these, I mentioned in my talk Friday that a lot of things I found I was fascinated by juxtaposition of two dissimilar things put together. And I think this really resonated in the, maybe more in the adult. If you look at the Secret Garden, you have the juxtaposition of the geometry, which I love. I'm a geometry freak, but also the organic nature of the color of the flowers and the design of the flowers, which were very irregular. They weren't, laid out in a pattern like the geometry was. This is a glass mosaic. It was just beautifully done. And I kept gravitating back to it because Brenda had done two pieces, and I kept wondering why this one got my attention more, because the other one was also great. But there you have it. That's what I decided. It was the lighting. And Steel Magnolias, again, that juxtaposition of these very highly refined portraits, the play on words with the movie, and then the botanical illustration of Magnolias virginianus, which you see kind of drawn, and you have the organic at the top, very fluid and loose, and then the very geometric illustration at the bottom, not geometric, but very finished illustration at the bottom. I loved the irregularity of the Bower photography, the Bower at Bedford 2, which was reflected in the piano, which is that bottom line, that bottom section. But the spacing was irregular, and I could see the artist nodding as I was saying all these comments. But the texture of the glass gives a great fluidity, especially when you look at it close. So if it had been just flat glass, I don't think it would still been a very powerful image. But that textured glass almost made it look like water.
Yeah.
And again, a juxtaposition. And then for the places, Sarah Baldock's piece had that layering. The more I looked at it, the more I saw it under drawing, and then drawing on top of, and then a lot of different kinds of mark making, which really fascinated me. Again, the more I looked at it, the more I wanted to look at it. The spinning wheel, his lighting, everything is very warm. Even in the shadows, the blue tends to be warm, which is difficult to pull off, but worked really well. It reminded me of John Singer Sargent, the way he masters his whites so well. But this was really a study of white and brown, if you would. A little bit, or you want to go further, blue and orange, because brown is kind of orangish. But also those broken lines, if you look at it closely, you have a lot of straight lines. And if he had done them sharply, it might have been too much. But because he broke them, and only in one or two places are they sharply refined, it gives it a softer look and a more inviting look. It's that just those broken lines, found and lost edges is what they refer to it in art. And then the point shoes. Well, I told you I wanted to be a ballerina, so there you go.
There's your story.
But I tried not to let that influence me. But I just found, okay, this one, it's the plain space around it, highly realistic. It's very beautifully rendered, but also I can almost feel the space around it. I can almost take my hand and imagine that, and that's difficult to pull off. I mean, you see walking into the room with the spinning wheel, but with the ballet shoes, you can almost feel the curve in your hand as you would go around the satin from the front to the back. And that's difficult to do. Again, that's more that lost edge that a lot of artists don't understand. They'll say, well, in the photograph, it was sharp. But in life, it's not unless you're looking at a cardboard cutout. So that's it.
That's it. You kept it
That is
very
all.
brief. I know. Clearly, you could tell that
I
Linda and
tried
I
to.
could talk for hours if we were allowed to. Um, so,
Oh, no kidding.
yes. And I hate that we didn't get to talk about these pieces even more. As Linda, I'll circle back to something she said at the beginning. They're obviously stunning in photographs. They're obviously going to look great on the website. But I do encourage you to come in and look at them in person. There is something about being up close to that artwork, seeing it under the lights, seeing as you mentioned in places, the mart making, the craft of that art in 3 dimensions. A photograph is never actually going to grab all of that.
Right. And of course, if you move the piano back where it was, you could actually stand where the photographer was to see that Bower at Bedford too.
I actually did at the end of the exhibit because people wanted to see
Yay!
it. So once the chairs were down, I moved it back so everybody could see the vision that she had photographed from.
Oh, that's great. That's great, because that was going to be one of my major. I thought that would be so clever for me to say. And I'm like, okay, throw that card away.
Yeah, but you said it, and then people were like, well, we want to see what she was talking about. And I was like, well, we'll move it. It's on wheels.
Right. And then what was their response?
Oh, they were like, oh yeah, I see it. And it's, I think it's kismet and luck that if you stand at that piano and look at the view, if you just shift your gaze to the left, you see the image in the hallway right next to you. So it's not only that you see where the inspiration of the photograph came from, it's that you see the photograph next to the inspiration of where the photograph came from.
Well, that's it. That was it. That did not affect the fact that I chose it, but that was just a icing on the cake kind of moment.
That was a smart hang by the exhibits committee. They knew what they were doing, I think, when they put that there.
It sure was. Agreed. Yeah.
All right. I'm looking at my time. We've got to wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining us, Linda, the judge for our 12th Annual Currie Bower Exhibition. That is currently open in our galleries until April 4th. And many of these pieces are for sale. So if you want to take it home, come see me. Those gallery hours are going to be 1 to 6, Wednesday through Friday. Saturdays we're open from 11 to 3. And if those times don't work for you, give me a call, set an appointment. We can do that anytime you want. Admission to our galleries is always free. And don't forget, there's always something happening at the Bower Center for the Arts for people of all ages. We've got a full slate of concerts and performances and events throughout this year. But coming soon is the Big Band of the Blue Ridge, who will be with us on March 28th. And then on April 4th, the day that the exhibit closes, we have Noah Spencer, one of the top 10 finalists from NBC's The Voice season 24. And then, finally, on May 16th, locals Wynn Creasy and C.W. Markham III will return to their stage with their spring cabaret, Lovers and Other Strangers. All of our concerts begin at 6 p.m. Advance tickets are only $20. Get them before they sell out. Next up in the galleries, if you're looking ahead, for the month of April, we'll be hosting the Bedford County Public Schools annual exhibit of middle school and high school work, sponsored this year by the Bedford Area Educational Foundation. And then our class schedule, I can't even begin to highlight how many classes we have. We have stuff in mosaics, clay, painting, jewelry workshops, and everything. Those are all available on our website. So for more information about any of these events, you can visit our website, bowercenter.org, or check on our social media pages. Or if you're old school like me, just stop in, say hello, and see what's happening. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thank you again, Linda, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.